Ever get that feeling like you're trying to understand something big that happened really far away, in another country? And it's
Oh.
like you can see the picture, but it's kind of blurry.
Yeah, like you're missing some pieces of the puzzle.
You know what I mean?
Absolutely. You get the what, but not the why.
Yeah, exactly. Like something happened, but you don't really get the deeper reasons or the long-term impact.
Right. Like how it really affected things.
And especially when it comes to trying to understand a whole other culture, it can be tough to grasp what's really going on beneath the surface. Like all those unspoken things that shape how people see the world, those can be hard to figure out.
It's like you're missing the cultural context.
Yes. And that's what we're all about in this deep dive today. We're going to gently unpack some notable incidents that happened in Japan. And we're doing this especially for you guys, our high school listeners from all over the world.
We want to give you the full picture
Right. Not just tell you what happened, but help you understand why it matters.
and what it means in the bigger scheme of things.
Exactly. Like we're going to try to bring that blurry picture into focus.
And to really zoom in, we're going to be looking at a particular event that caused quite a stir, both in Japan and internationally.
Oh, yeah. This one was big news.
The shooting of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe.
Okay, so for this deep dive, our main source is going to be the Wikipedia page on the incident. It gives a really comprehensive overview of everything that happened, like the timeline and the immediate reactions.
A good, solid, factual foundation.
Definitely. So we'll unpack the sequence of events, explore the motivations, and then see how it all rippled out.
Yeah, the what, the why, and the so what.
And we'll do it in a way that makes sense, even if you're coming from a totally different background.
We're aiming for those aha moments without making it too much all at once.
Perfect. Okay, so July 8th, 2022, that's the date.
Right.
And the place was near Yamato Saidaiji Station in Nara, Japan. But this wasn't just any random place, was it?
No, not at all. It was during a campaign speech, which is important.
Okay, why is that important?
Well, because the person who was attacked, Mr. Abe, was a very prominent figure in Japanese politics.
He was a big deal.
Yes, he was prime minister for a significant period.
Right. So to understand the impact of this, we need to remember that he wasn't just anybody.
Exactly. He'd been a leader for a long time, so it was a huge shock.
Like if a former president or prime minister in your country was suddenly attacked.
It would be major news.
Yeah, so he's giving this speech to support another candidate in an upcoming election, and then, boom, this crazy thing happens.
It's hard to even imagine.
So he was shot.
Shot twice, actually.
Wow. And the weapon was a homemade gun, right?
Yeah, which is, unusual to say the least.
Very unusual. I mean, that raises so many questions.
It does. How did he even get that? What was he thinking? It's a lot to unpack there.
Definitely. So obviously this was serious from the get-go. Like he went into cardiac arrest right there at the scene.
Immediate.
And even though the emergency services got there fast and rushed him to the hospital, he didn't make it.
No, he was later pronounced dead.
It's crazy how quickly it all happened. Like the shooting was at 11:03:01 in the morning, and then he passed away at 5:03 p.m.
Yeah, that just shows how severe his injuries were.
And even with all the efforts to save him,
Sadly, it wasn't enough.
it was all over the news, right?
Yeah, everywhere. In Japan and internationally.
I remember seeing it on the news here, too.
It was huge. Some international media even called it an assassination.
That's a strong word.
It is, but it shows how significant this event was, and that it wasn't just random, it was targeted.
Okay, so let's talk about the person who did this. Our source calls him Man X, and he was 41 years old at the time. What was his deal?
Why did he do it? Well, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. What was his motivation?
Well, from what came out, the main reason seems to be that he was deeply, deeply resentful towards a certain religious organization.
Okay, which one?
The Unification Church. You might also hear it called the Family Federation for World Peace and Unification, or sometimes just the Old Unification Church.
I think I've heard of them.
Yeah, they've been around for a while.
So this guy had a problem with them, but what exactly made him so angry at this church?
Well, a key part of it was his mom. She was a member of the Unification Church, and she'd made a lot of donations to them.
Okay, donations. What's wrong with that?
Well, we're not talking about small change here.
Like really big donations.
Big donations. And this is where things get really complicated because these donations apparently caused major financial problems for his family.
Oh, wow. So he blamed the church for his family's
Yeah,
struggles.
seems like it. He felt that they were responsible for the hardship his family went through, and this is where the connection to Mr. Abe comes in.
To Abe. Okay, help me understand this. How does Abe fit into this whole thing?
Well, the attacker believed that Abe had close ties to the Unification Church. But here's the thing. It wasn't his original target.
Really? He wanted to go after someone else first.
It seems that way. He actually wanted to target the leader of the Unification Church, a woman named Han Haksha.
Okay, so why didn't he?
The pandemic got in the way.
Really?
Yeah, she wasn't in Japan at the time because of COVID travel restrictions.
Oh, so he couldn't get to her, and that's why he shifted his focus to Abe.
It seems so.
But why Abe?
It comes down to his belief that Abe had promoted the church in Japan. And on top of that, he also held this belief about Abe's grandfather, former Prime Minister Nobusi Kishi.
What about him?
He believed Kishi was the one who brought the Unification Church to Japan in the first place.
So he's connecting the dots, like all the way back to Abe's grandfather.
Yeah, it was all tied together in his mind, the church, his family's struggles, and these political figures.
That's pretty intense. And he didn't just suddenly decide to do this, did he? It sounds like it was planned.
Oh yeah, there were signs that he'd been thinking about this for a while and preparing for it.
Like what?
Well, for example, there was an incident a few years earlier where he tried to attack a Unification Church event in Nagoya.
Really? What did he do?
He used Molotov cocktails.
Wow, this guy was serious.
He was. And there's more. He'd also been getting his hands on, or even building, homemade firearms.
This is starting to sound like a movie.
And to top it off, he'd been tracking Abe's public appearances online.
So he knew where Abe would be.
Yeah, so he could plan his attack. It's chilling when you think about it.
It is. All this planning, all this anger. I mean, it makes you wonder about this Unification Church, right? What is it about them that caused such strong feelings?
Yeah, they're definitely a controversial group.
Let's try to understand them a little better. So, first of all, they're not originally from Japan, right?
No, the Unification Church is a religious movement with roots outside of Japan.
Okay, so they came to Japan from somewhere else.
That's right. And their presence here has been marked by some, well, controversies over the years.
Controversies, like what?
Well, this whole incident really brought those issues to the forefront.
I see.
One of the big ones is this thing called spiritual sales.
Spiritual sales. What's that? I've never heard of that before.
It's essentially a term for high-pressure sales tactics that they've been accused of using.
Like how?
Well, they reportedly try to create this sense of fear or obligation in people.
Fear of what?
Like, they might suggest that bad things will happen to you or your loved ones if you don't buy certain religious items or make big donations.
That's messed up.
It can be quite manipulative, making people feel pressured into doing things they might not otherwise do. And this is similar to what the attacker's family experienced, the financial pressure and hardship.
So their financial practices were one issue. But there was something else too, right?
Yes. After the shooting, there were a lot of questions about their connections to politicians.
Politics.
Yeah, people started looking into the relationships between some Japanese politicians, especially those in the Liberal Democratic Party, which was Abe's party, and the Unification Church.
Oh, wow. So the attackers' belief that Abe was connected to them, whether it was completely true or not, played a big role in his motivation.
It seems to have solidified his anger.
It's interesting. The Wikipedia page mentions that surveys were done after the shooting, and they found that a lot of members of the Diet, that's Japan's parliament, had some kind of connection to the Unification Church.
It was a significant number.
And that's not to say those connections were necessarily bad or corrupt or anything.
Right, we're just presenting the information as it is. We're not trying to say whether these relationships were right or wrong.
Exactly, we're just laying out the facts here.
But it definitely became a huge topic of discussion in Japan.
So, after this horrific event, what happened? How did the government respond?
Well, they acted quickly and seriously. A task force was set up right away, and Prime Minister Kishida rushed back to Tokyo.
Wow, so they really understood the gravity of the situation.
They did. Condolences started pouring in from leaders and people both within Japan and from all over the world.
I bet. It must have been a shock to everyone.
It was. And they decided to hold a state funeral for Abe.
That's a big honor, right?
It is, and it's usually reserved for very important figures. But the decision to hold a state funeral actually caused some debate within Japan.
Why?
Well, it kind of highlights the fact that there were different opinions about Abe and his legacy.
I see. Some people supported him, others didn't.
Exactly. But in the end, the state funeral went ahead.
Okay. What else?
Something else that happened, which is really important to talk about, is the scrutiny that the police faced after the shooting
Scrutiny for what?
for their handling of the security at the event.
Oh, you mean like people questioning if they could have prevented it?
Exactly. The public and the media were very critical of the security arrangements. They felt that the police had failed to recognize and stop the threat before it was too late.
That's a heavy accusation.
It is, and it led to some serious consequences.
Like what?
Well, two high-ranking police officials ended up resigning. The National Police Agency Commissioner General, which is the top police job in Japan, and the head of the Nara Prefectural Police.
So they stepped down because of the security failures?
Yeah, they basically took responsibility for what happened.
That's a big deal.
It is. And it also led to a major overhaul of security protocols in Japan.
Oh, so they made changes to try to prevent something like this from happening again?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
They wanted to make sure that important public figures were better protected.
What kind of changes?
Well, one of the big ones was giving the National Police Agency a bigger role in security planning for high-profile individuals.
To a more central control.
Yeah, and they also implemented new equipment and training for security personnel.
I see. So more resources and better training for security.
It was a major effort to upgrade security across the board.
So beyond all the immediate responses, did this event have any lasting effects on Japan?
It did. This wasn't just a one-day news story. It really shook things up. Well, for one thing, it had a big impact on public opinion. And it also forced people to really look at the relationship between politicians and religious organizations.
Like we were talking about earlier with the Unification Church.
Exactly. And remember how we mentioned that the ruling party, the LDP, started investigating its own members' connections to the church?
Right.
Well, that was a direct result of this incident. They really wanted to understand how deep those ties went.
It seems like this event triggered a wave of self-reflection in Japan.
It did. It sparked a lot of important conversations.
And what about the attacker? What happened to him legally?
Well, after the shooting, he was arrested and charged.
With what?
Murder, obviously. And also violations of Japan's gun control laws. Because remember, he used a homemade gun.
Oh, right. I forgot about that. Those are pretty strict in Japan, right?
Very strict. So the legal process began. But because of the nature of his motivations and his mental state, there was a period of psychiatric evaluation.
They wanted to understand if he was fit to stand trial, right?
Exactly. And as of today, based on our source, the legal proceedings are still ongoing.
So it's not over yet.
No, not by a long shot. It's been a very complex process, and a full trial isn't expected to start until maybe 2025 or even later.
So this whole thing is still unfolding.
It is. The legal side of things is still playing out.
Okay. So for our listeners, especially you guys who are high school students from other countries, what are some of the key takeaways here? I mean, what are the things that are important to understand about this event and what it means for Japan?
That's a great question. One of the most important things to grasp is that political violence in Japan is extremely rare.
Rare. Like it almost never happens.
Almost never. It's not a country where you see political assassinations or attacks on politicians happening very often. That's why this whole thing was such a shock for everyone.
It's a total anomaly.
It really was. It's important to remember that Japan has very low levels of violent crime in general compared to many other parts of the world.
So this event really stands out. It's not the norm at all.
Not at all.
And what about religion in Japan? You mentioned that it's different there, right?
Yeah, it can be quite different from what you're used to, like the levels of religious affiliation and the way religious organizations function in society might not be the same.
So understanding that background can help make sense of the whole Unification Church situation.
Exactly. It adds an important layer of context.
One last thing. You talked about how the Japanese media covered this event.
Oh, right. That's another thing that might be interesting to consider.
Like how their reporting evolved over time.
Yeah, how they initially reported on the shooting and then how that shifted as more information came out about the Unification Church.
Like maybe they started digging deeper into certain aspects of the story.
Exactly. It wasn't just a one-time news report. It became an ongoing investigation in a way.
Okay, so to wrap things up, we've been talking about the tragic killing of former Prime Minister Shinzo Abe, which was a very unusual act of violence for Japan. And it seems like the attacker was driven by personal grudges against the Unification Church and his belief that Abe was connected to them.
Right. It was a very complex mix of personal and political factors.
And this event, even though it was a single act, it had a huge ripple effect. It got people talking about security for public figures, the role of religion in politics, and even how the media covers these kinds of sensitive events.
It touched on a lot of important issues.
For our international listeners, especially you high school students tuning in from different parts of the world, I hope this deep dive has given you a better understanding of this really significant moment in Japan's recent history.
We've tried to give you the context and the insights that maybe you wouldn't get just from reading the headlines.
And as we finish up, I want to leave you with something to think about. This event had so many layers: the personal tragedy, the religious influence, the political fallout. It really makes you wonder, what does it tell us about how unexpected events can completely reshape a society, even one that's known for being stable and peaceful?
It's a powerful reminder that even in a place where things seem predictable and calm, sudden events can happen that force everyone to re-examine their assumptions and have deep, deep consequences.
Oh, it makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. It really does.